Welcome everybody to the Arts Central. I guess. Oh, I thought you were to be if you haven't been here, I'm sure you've been here before. I'd like to start with acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and future. And I would love to introduce Penny Coss, former lecturer here.
Yeah.
You were studying. Are you lecturing here until?
Maybe 2008, something like that.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you're happy to be back. So please welcome Penny Coss.
Thank you, Cedric. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, and I do pay my respects to those past, present and emerging. I'm thrilled to be here. It's very short notice, but it was delightful when Gira asked me to come along. I have a very soft, special place in my heart for this place, as I have been teaching here for a number of years, but also at NMTAFE. And in my view, they were the halcyon days of working and learning and teaching. So today I wanted to talk with you about my practice, and because I've been doing this for a while, so I'm trying to think of ways that might suit your interests and where you're at. So am I right in saying that you're doing the diploma and the certificate for, is that correct? No, diploma and then the advanced diploma. Right, so you've been around. And certificate 3. All right. All right, okay. So, excuse my back, okay, I just need to sort this out. I'm going to start by talking with you about how I've come about working predominantly with geology, rocks, and also sedimentology. So I wanted to just go right back and talk with you a little bit about my history as a painter, and then I want to progress a little bit into how painting has become a very important inspiration for my performance work. So hopefully I've got this in order. So I just want to run, I think I might have to sit down, sorry. I'm thinking I might just play these and just talk, because I can't work the technology with talking clearly. Particularly when I have my long distance glasses on. So that should just play through. All right. So these images that I'm showing you are an accumulation of how I work with the material of paint, matter. I see it as matter, and how I'm influenced by the earth, landscape, but more importantly, geological forms. So I'm very interested in ancient strata. So I would paint, and then I would paint and paint and paint, and I would experiment a lot with the surfaces that I was working on. I would have primed surfaces, I'd have smooth surfaces, large scale supports, and I would allow the paint to do what it does, not dissimilar to what you're looking at now. So this is a video that I took in the museum, the Science Museum, a while ago. And actually what you're looking at is minerals that are falling according to gravity, and they're settling according to their own weight. So that's a really important aspect of how I use paint, and hopefully you'll start to see that. But I don't think of paint as in terms of painting. I think of it more as an unctuous material that is totally illogical to work with. When you think about it, a wet medium, you're pushing it around on a surface, you're reliant on not just yourself, but also gravity, because I tend to tip my paintings and so on and so forth. And I allow the paint to do what it does. A little bit of intervention, but I'm terribly influenced, as I said, by its materiality and how my handedness is I like to tie my hands behind my back a bit, not literally, but metaphorically. So I'm very interested in moving further and further away from this work. And I'm not entirely sure why, apart from thinking that I want the material to do its thing. I don't want to control it. So as I continue to work, I'm less inclined to use the ego, if you like. So I want to drop the ego. So what you're looking at, these works are actually works that are at this was a public art project that I did with the International Airport in Perth. I don't know if you've travelled overseas, but you'll probably see these. I think they're still there. And so these were works that have been taken from paintings, but they've transferred them into glazed works, and they've used them as barriers for the baggage area in the arrivals, and the other works were used for the exit areas. You'll see some images coming up. So this work, they're kind of morphing a little bit into this mix between paint and strata, paint and geology, layering. This is a huge work, even though it's a shockingly small image. These works are large. These are about close to 2 metres by 2 metres. You will also see intermittently are slightly more subdued works that look like they've been soaked into the canvas as opposed to the works or the paint sitting on the canvas. So I'm starting to look at the canvas as a permeable site. So not only can paint sit on it, it could sit in it, it can also fall through it. So I think we've just gone through a lot of them, but I'll just stick on this one for a bit. So with these works, I used raw canvas to pour paint onto, and I would re-pour paint using buckets. There's large work. Using buckets of pigment and water and some medium, and I would occasionally let the paint dry, or I would let the wet paint intermix. So I would build the painting in that way. So whilst this work sits very much on the surface, it's actually soaked into the raw canvas. Similar, these works, large again, doing similar thing, but this is called, it's either sky or cloud. And I think because I can't quite decide which is which, I like to change that title a bit. Titles are very important for your work, can I just say. I do not ever write a title which is untitled. Because I guess that titles, they are an opening for someone that's actually engaging with the work, and it does help people to, it's a starting point, if you like. So that's the gates that are heading out of the international airport. Someone once said to me that they thought this was a great image because I managed to beat the neon advertising. My work seems to come out better. Anyway, So these are quite old works. These are, works that probably I worked on from and finished working on probably 2015, something like that. So I wanted to move a little bit further into some other work. What I think I will do is bring up my website, because I've got a lot of stuff neatly put and archived actually into my website. So a website, honestly, I'm not sure how valuable a website is, but it's extremely valuable for me because it does help me to keep my things in order and to keep a record. So archivally, it's quite important. So what I would like to show you first is how coming from the painting and the stain work in particular, how I'm starting to segue into three-dimensional field. So this was a work that I had done for, sorry, they're not very big images, but you can see them okay, can't you? Yeah. And so I'll just show you that first image again. So what you can see is a platform which I had built. I had them build for me. It's slightly elevated, and I have a series of works in there that allude to some kind of journey, maybe, some kind of potential in activation. There's a sense of, I wonder what's going to happen here, right? So particularly, the ladder and the dolly. I love dollies, by the way. I have a lot of dollies in my studio. And that's important when you need to move heavy things, get a dolly. This was actually performed, if you like, in 3 iterations. So this, in fact, was the last of the iteration of the three displays. And in between those 3 activations, I was the activator. And this is a still taken of me whilst I was sort of midway through performing my installation. I'll just show you a little video. It's just a little short. I'm not sure if there's sound with this. You probably can't hear that. So there's a metronome clicking away. And you're starting to see little bits of sediment, like this kind of watery thing moving into rocky thing, sediment, material, matter. And I think these are just stills. I don't know if I can get these up. Okay, so there's stills of me performing in between the iterations, the 3 iterations. Sadly, the show was shut down during COVID. So this amazing work, not just mine, but others as well, was not seen by very many people. It's interesting to talk with the curator about this, Gemma Weston, who you may or may not know, an amazing curator, whenever we see each other, we kind of almost mourn the loss of this, the potential of this show. Anyway, so going from me performing, I'm going to put my reading glasses on. This is ridiculous. So going from the painting and the idea of walking into a painting to literally walking through the work. There's that word installation, but it's not. It doesn't come from nowhere. It's in my view. It's very active. It's very proactive, and I like the idea of the vulnerability of your practice and how that emanates through the changing part of your practice. So these works will not ever be the way they were. They will always be different. And of course, as you come to look at an artwork, you will also see an artwork differently on one day to the next. So I'm trying to talk about that idea of, I've completely lost the word, help me. The idea of not vulnerability, but the idea of change, and that nothing really stays solid, stagnant. So this is the issue that I had, I suppose, with painting, that once it all dries, it's there, it's stable, but I want to make it unstable. And I think that's what's going on in my work now, that I really want to undo, I want to re-stratify all of the work. I want to go back to the materiality of the work. So, I'm just going to show you something that I was working on. This is a part of a project that I was doing that related to my research into stromatolites, which are fossilised up in the Pilbara. They're incredibly old, and I was working with a Professor Martin Crane-Donk, who is a specialist in studying stromatolites. They are incredibly old. They ruled the earth once upon a time. And then, because they were great oxygen makers, they in fact committed suicide because they killed themselves. But that's another story. If you're interested in stromatolites, they have a really interesting link. There's a theory that because they are microbial, there is a link between human form and that they are, in fact, our first ancestors. So I did a lot of research into this. I was really interested in this idea of a rock that was living, because they're living rocks. So I should probably show you a photograph of one, but I don't have one. I've only got this one, which is, it's a cross-section of a very dead one. I'm not sure how old this is. I don't know if it says. It would be 3.2 billion years old. So what you're seeing is a series of layers of, can you see this in my painting? Totally. So a series of layers where you have, they generally grow in very warm waters, and there are a lot in Gadigal at the moment, very endangered habitat as well. So Gadigal, Shark Bay. And they grow in very hot, still waters, very shallow, hot, still waters. So because they're shallow, they heat up very quickly, and because they're hot, microbial matter grows. And so when the tides, very gentle tides, come in with sediment from rocks from all over, they start to settle, and the microbial areas form mats. So the sediments sit on top of the mats, and then as that settles in the calmer times, the microbial mats grow their filaments up to the sun, because they grow through photosynthesis. So it's really like a trapping and a binding of the two things. So this seemingly inert sediment growing alongside the stromatolite, the microbial matter. Anyway, so that's just like, that's something that I'm quite interested in, because it looks at, it questions the definitions that we make. So when I went to the museum in Welshpool to research these pieces, I went to the paleontology section, not the geology section. And there's something about this idea of how all things are integrated that really drives my interest. So I continued to do that research, looking at the archives. I'm quite interested in using archives as a research. You've seen that image, so I'm not going to show you that again. And so this research drove some other works that I've been working on, and I won't show you that just yet. I did a series of works like these on the floor of the gallery situation, the gallery floor, which are simply made of calcium carbonate and water. And so stromatolites have at the base calcium carbonate as a matter. So my interest in looking at the stromatolites has also developed into looking at the diagrams that were historically made of the stromatolites in various research journals and research papers, I should say. So I sort of took that, so as it worked as a tool for me. I needed to be out in the field. I needed to know where these pieces, I needed to understand them. And then I would bring that back into the studio space. I would look at the archives that were present. I just needed to get as much as I possibly could. And there were so many different opportunities and different spaces that I could look at this. And so these pieces also had sand in them. And in a performance, I actually swept up these works, because once the calcium carbonate and water dries, it returns to powder. So getting back to what I said earlier about wanting to re-stratify these things, I want these things to return to their matter. So a lot of my work is about trying to activate that. And so the performance, oh, there's a stromatolite, there you go. They're the ones that are in Gadigal, and they have been affectionately described as underwater cowpats. And they're not very attractive, they really aren't. But wow, they're so interesting. And there's the cross sections that I've been researching, and you might see in there some of the influences in that previous drawing. So these things take a long time to grow. They grow to grow an inch. It takes a year. And so then I proceeded to do a performance. I won't show you that performance, but there's another image of it complete. So the green is actually the sand, and it does relate to the microbial matter, because the microbial matter starts as green, and then when it dies it goes black. And there's just some more, and there's the pieces that have been swept up, and I put them back into the lab jar, and that's still sitting in the studio, and I will reuse that for another project. Just more images of the same thing. So there it is, half swept up. And as an image, it's actually quite interesting as well. Again, it relates to the other work that I did on the stage, which it talks about the anticipation of what might be happening next, or what has been done. So my work is really, it's cinematic in a sense. It relates to not just the objectness of it, but what it was, what it is, and what it could be. So again, that shape-shifting, that instability. I'm going to just go and show you some exhibitions that I've just had. I'll show you one that I just recently had here at the Art Collective. Yay. So this is in-store shots of the show, and what you can see is works on paper in a smaller section, and then in the larger, that's kind of returning to that stain work that I was working on earlier. The paperworks are stained works as well, and various processes. I'd actually stain them in vats. So I would layer them by the pigmented water differently. Like I actually put the support into the paint this time rather than the paint going onto the support. I wanted to display them in this way. I wanted them to be cinematic, and they're all individually framed, but I wanted them to be, modular. I'd like them to be works that can move around in terms of their arrangement. So again, that applies with other works that I've done in terms of the idea that nothing stays stagnant. There's a little plinth there which has an object on it, and I'll show you that in a minute. So it's just sitting on a mirror, and you can see that there's more works. I won't talk too much about those 3 works up there. And then there's these crazy glass pieces that are also in the foreground. So I've started to take my father's archives. Dad was a geologist, and I've been working with his geopic and also some of the rocks that he has in his collection. And I wanted to make them into glass and pink. That was accidental, but pink's right as far as I'm concerned. I won't talk too much about these. I just want to get to the glass objects. So this is, you can see the bubbles inside it. So the actual work itself is a glass piece. It's a slump glass that was retrieved from the bottom of a furnace, and it was in Dad's possession. And so I like the idea of a glass piece being cast into glass, and the cast glass is quite different because of its. Is there such a word as bubblation? But you can see the bubbles that are captured within that glass, and I like that idea of its vulnerability again, and its not quite rightness. And that's another piece that I played around with. That's the geopic, which is incredibly well cast. I didn't do the casting, so I commissioned the Canberra Glassworks to do that for me, and that's just the top end of just showing you how incredibly detailed this casting process is. So these have become objects, which is absolutely not what I'm talking about, and very covetable as well. I love these pieces, but they've gone, they sold, and I am gutted. So apart from this attachment, it might have something to do with the personal and my personal history, but I think it's a bit more than that. But the other thing, the alternative as an idea, is that glass can be smashed up and it can also return to its original form. So there's something about the sustainability, that's not the right term, but the shifting, the re-stratifying, rather than, it is not de-stratifying, it's re-stratifying. So bringing it back to its original state. And of course, glass is silica, glass is sand. So there's links with my works. How are we going for time? Sorry? Easy. I mean, I want questions as well, so maybe I'll just talk about one more body of work. Oh, this is a long conversation. Let's do it. So this work was in the Fremantle Biennale a while ago, 2019, and it occupied 4 galleries. I had one gallery which had suspended swim rings, as you can see in that photograph, and then the second gallery had a full wall video, and the third gallery had a 3-piece video installation, 3-channel video installation, and the fourth gallery had text, which you can barely see. So that's how it was presented. And this work was a response to sight. It was a response to tides, and it was also a response to the vulnerabilities of the currents and changing currents with our climate change and rising water levels. So I'll just show you a quick excerpt of one of these. This does have sound, but I don't think you're going to be able to hear it. Slow moving. These are tracer dyes that are used to monitor tides, actually, and currents. and they're environmentally very safe. Surf Life Saving uses it, and a lot of other people who monitor water systems use it, so that they can see. It's a bit like, you know, getting a dye in your system, and they follow your blood, whatever. Anyway, so that continues. I don't think there's much. Anyway, you can, if you wanted to watch this, just get onto my website, you can see it. So now you can see the context of these pieces. This was quite interesting when people were in it. When people aren't in it, it's like, what? Don't get that. When people are in it, they're actually under this layer. So I liked the idea of people experiencing being under in a watery sense. So the gallery becomes, because they're usually, you know, 4 walls, the gallery becomes an entity for me to be able to manipulate and play with. So this is like, you can just see a little bit of a cloth that's coming in from the window. So that's alluding to tide. The tide's rising. This is on the top floor. The idea that the tide levels are rising. I did a bit of research into the tsunami at Banda Aceh as well in 2004 and 2011. Maybe I should just leave it there. What do you think? How are we going for time?
Can we ask some questions as well?
Yeah. I'd love to have questions.
I was just wondering, the Paul Whitman, for that last one, what excerpts did you take?
That was a poem that he wrote very much at the end of his life, and he was reconciling his ego, actually. And the poem, I think, is called "As I Walk Through the Ebb and Flow of My Life." So this rhythm of ebb and flow is something that was quite important to me. Why do you ask?
Oh, I was curious what it meant to you in the context of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, he apparently when he wrote that, he spent his latter years on some coast in the United States, and he would spend his last days walking up and down the coast, watching the tides rolling in and rolling out. And it's a really beautiful personal poem about his sexuality and coming to terms with, you know, maybe all the things that he regrets in life as well.
Just curious about the cast glass series. So was that part of a series of other cast objects?
Sorry?
Is that a series of cast objects, or was it just that one?
No, it is part of a series of cast objects.
Tell us a little bit about that series, those objects, and the significance of them.
Well, I did say that the geopic was a cast of my father's geopic.
Sorry?
It was a cast of my father's geopic. And I had actually used his geopic in other works. I've actually used it in a video work as well. I wanted to deal with the camber of the geopic, what it feels to hold something like this as an extractive tool. And I guess that kind of that's a personal journey of asking questions about my father did and how I reconcile with that. So you've got this, you know, love for your father, and you've also got these questions about, oh, you know, what did you do and how do I feel about that? So because it's in glass, it means it's a non-functional object. And funnily enough, I was the only one that was allowed to hold it. So when I installed it in the exhibition, it was just me. And I remembered that because the reason was as I picked up the geopic in glass, I thought of it as a geopic in leather and steel. So I was handling it, rough handling it, if you like, until I realised that if I continued to do this, I could destroy it. That tension is in the work, yeah. And I explained a little bit about the glass object. So I'm interested in pursuing more of that, so looking at more of Dad's tools or other tools that relate to the geology and extraction as a way of critiquing it. Mm.
Like Lalique glass.
It what?
Looked like Lalique glass, that clouded, precious.
Well, that's that's the cast. That's what happens with cast glass. Yeah, it always looks kind of cloudy, if you like, unless it's polished. And I did actually have the glass rock polished, and so some of the facets were very frosty and the other facets were clear. And I wanted to be able to see through the rock as an idea, because you can't generally see through rocks, they're solid. So the glass seemed to be an appropriate medium to play around with. Mm. Yeah.
So Penny, you do artist residences. So you just did one at Carriageworks Arts Centre. So do you have any images what you could share, or could you tell about the residency and what is the importance for you in your art practice?
It's got a lot of equipment here, I'd just like to say. Okay, so I can go to projects and just show you what we were doing with the residency. So this is just finished. I don't have a lot of images of this because it's still very raw. I don't know if I can, can I open that up? Yeah, it's tiny, sorry. So we were following, there's two other artists that I'm working with, we're collaborating, and we call ourselves Shear Zone. Purdy Phillips is one, and Sarah Tomasetti is another. You would know Perdita Phillips. Huge fun, she's so great. So we were following a limestone trail because all three of us are quite interested in calcium carbonate. But we also deal with them very differently. So we got the residency at the Fremantle Arts Centre. We just applied and did our spiel, and they went, yeah, come in, you know. And so then we got to work. So then we did research and we did field work heading down here, following the Tamala Limestone Trail. And so we went caving, and I found that this was a really interesting element of limestone formations, because this is the doline where you have CaCO3, calcium carbonate, intermixing with soil and water, and it drips, obviously, to create the stalactites and the stalagmites, but it also eats away. So I love the idea of this negative space, this void. And so that drove a lot of our interests. And Sarah Tomasetti did a work. She's a very well-known fresco painter, and she does a lot of work with lime, and she used the pigments that were found when we were down south to create these pieces where it's a bit hard to see that, but where she's intermixed the lime onto muslin cloth. Normally you would put it onto a prepared wall surface, but with using it and putting it on the lime cloth, it meant that she could take it off and it could become, she calls them banners of lime wash, which are, can be any length. And that's an example of one of the works close up. What she does is she will use the pigment, she will use the lime, but then once that's finished, in order to seal it, she will add wax onto both sides of the surface. So what you're seeing is the cracking of the wax intermixing with the pigments and the lime. So I don't know if I have a photograph. This is all very raw, it's just happened. So that was me looking at the thrombolites that are down in Lake Thetis. Bit of writing, a little bit of talking together. That's Purdy doing a little bit of work down at the farm, Margaret River Farm Residency. We were fortunate to get a few days there, simply by getting in touch with the coordinators and asking them if they would be happy to host us for a bit. Very generous, very appreciative. And that's Sarah. And I don't know if I have, at the moment, so what happened, I'll just go back to the cave. Wait, I might have some more images. Let me just... Yeah. So this is an image, this might take a while to open up. This is an image of the banners that Sarah produced, and around the space, so this is the studio space, and around the space Purdy had done a series of sound works that were from the cave experience, so the drip, 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 drip. And because we had about 6 or 7 speakers, so it was choreographed to sound like this. It was rhythmic, it was beautiful. And throughout this, I did a performance. So I walked through all of this, and so the space became the doll line. That's how I managed to interpret it. It was a really great experience to do this performance within the studio. We had full capacity, which is maximum of 10 people come to see the performance. And the experience of performing in front of people in such an intimate way really came to fruition after the fact, because both Perdita and I pulled up chairs and we sat right in front of everyone and asked them to talk with us about what they had experienced from this performance. It was a very generative experience, and I have to say these days I don't think artists have those opportunities as much as perhaps they once did. It's really critical for all of you. Can you hear me if I sit back a little bit or not? I think it's really critical that you're in the most amazing position as students. You've got your mates right next to you. Hang on to them, talk with them, keep hanging out together, because when you get out there, it's a pretty solitary experience, particularly if you're working, you know, towards a solo show, for example. It's a very different beast working in a commercial space as well as being experimental. Clearly, I've shown you most of my experimental work. Why? Because that's the thing that I really get off on. The commercial side of work is also very important, because you need to be able to earn a little bit of money from the sale of your work. And if that can support your experimental work, then that's the sweet spot. That's what sustains you. Because you all know that when you're working towards having an exhibition, you're experimenting all the time. You're not sure which is working, which isn't working, you're very vulnerable. But then when you have the show, it's like finished work, competent, confident, here I am. But that can wane. You know, artists have to be both, you know, tough and sensitive. It's a fine balance, not easy. So, Jira, did you want to talk any more about the residency, or?
Yeah, I think the students are getting a little bit like, oh, we need to go to the next class.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's 1 o'clock, so my advanced diplomas will be there soon. We need to get a break. So if you need to go, you can go. Thank you all. First, a big applause for Penny.
Thanks.
It's amazing to see this space used so differently than, because I've been in the same space on my own, and it's completely the opposite of what you guys did. We both used the diamond print and the light coming through, because I've seen that on some of your Instagram images that
Yeah.
you were using the light and the cast shadow.
That's true.
Yeah. So, any questions? Yeah.
Well, good luck, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to me. If you have any questions, just send me an email. You can find all that stuff on my website. I'd love to chat further, because that exchange is so important, even for someone like me who's been around a bit.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
it's absolutely. So, just having also parted from overseas here, it's so important to go to open studios and go to openings, because otherwise we don't have those conversations. You know, we just learn 2 times to each other, and we already have like this inspirational and good conversation. It makes me think more deeply, so thank you. Okay.
It was a bit of an overall, like a short, quick, but I was hoping that you might be able to see the links. Yeah.
I think it's interesting your link between your dad doing geology, which is effectively breaking down rock
Yeah.
and bringing it back to work out where it's come from, and now you're moving in towards breaking down that material and how you work with it.
That's a lovely observation. Thank you for that. Yeah.
That sort of synergy between the two.
Yeah. So the deeply personal always has to come through in your work.
Yeah. And maybe you want at one point, at some point in contact, because you perform too. Electric performance.
I don't know when I'm doing another performance, but yeah. This was a performance.
Yeah.
Thank you.